When the animal kingdom crosses paths with the concrete jungle, things can get pretty intense. And with a wild world out there, sometimes it can even get a little too close to home. Join us as we explore the comical and curious world of animal invasions. From ferocious animals prowling the streets to some cheeky intruders, there are moments when animals were found in places they had no business. Tiger on loose. A suburban neighborhood in Texas was forced to lock their doors and stay inside after a Bengal tiger was found sitting on a neighbor's lawn. The woman who recorded the entire incident called 911.
911, what's your emergency?
And also messaged her neighbors to find out whose kitty had escaped. A fearless neighbor, who was a sheriff's deputy, faced the tiger, hoping he wouldn't have to pull the trigger. Sure enough, the owner of the exotic pet realized and came outside, and was able to lure the tiger away. But neighbors protested the idea, so wildlife rescuers stepped in and took India the tiger to an animal sanctuary, where she was much happier. Tiger in Ashta village. Would you stay composed if this predator prowled in front of you? Well, I know for a fact I'd probably faint or run away, but I guess Indians are made of something entirely different. A Bengal tiger living in a reserve national park managed to find its way to a nearby village. While the tiger prowled the Ashta village, most of the residents came out of their houses to see the striped animal. Now, we all know how dangerous that is, especially since a hungry tiger can easily pounce on anyone. So the Indians were extremely lucky that the wildlife reserve caught up to the tiger and managed to coax it back home. Mountain lion at hotel. A mountain lion wandered into the hotel and even passed across the main lobby. The mountain lion was clearly seeking a warm place to rest and hoping to get some food, but all it faced was a long corridor lined by closed doors. Surprisingly, no one noticed the mountain lion until a guest saw it sitting right outside his door. The mountain lion tried going out, but was restless because of the guests. Soon, authorities were called to lure the animal away. But what a scary turn of events! Rampaging elephant. We think elephants are docile creatures, but when you anger one, it's near impossible to survive. So no wonder citizens in a town in the Indian state of Odisha took cover when one elephant managed to find its way onto the street. The elephant was clearly not in a happy mood. The animal was later lured back into the forests after it had calmed down a bit. But this proves you do not want to mess with an elephant. They may be gentle, but they can hold some serious grudges. Bear breaks into home. They say nothing will stop a hungry bear, not even a locked door and a glass window. Just look closely. This hungry bear is desperate for a snack, so it decides to take out a kitchen window, crawl its way inside, and feast on the leftovers still on the plates and the sink. The bear then crawls even further inside, toppling some cans and finally grabbing its select food before ducking back out the window. Luckily, the bear decided to leave, but the situation could have gotten quite serious if it decided to explore the house. Roaming lion. The good thing about being in India is that you can see majestic wild animals anytime you want. The bad thing about living in India is that these savage animals can choose to see you anytime they please. Just thinking about a lion prowling your front yard sounds unreal, but for the residents of Joshipura, it became reality. The fierce lion snuck into the city sometime in the night and began chasing cattle. It even encountered a dog, which tried its best to escape. Since this happened late at night, everyone was safe. But I can't imagine what would happen if someone decided to take the trash out at that moment. Sea lion invasion. Sea lions can be surprisingly aggressive, so when dozens of them clutter the streets of an Argentinian city, folks decided to stay away. Part of the reason why sea lions made their way out from the water was because the city was under lockdown. They had finally found the perfect time to soak in the sun, and they knew they wouldn't be bothered by humans. A similar situation happened in Punta del Este, Uruguay, But this time, a huge sea lion named Roberto made its way into a building and refused to leave. Onlookers tried coaxing Roberto with fish, which it happily gulped, but still didn't budge. But every time they got close, Roberto would yap and scare them away. Finally, the intruding sea lion left on its own. Buffalo pees in house. Imagine someone barges into your home unannounced, refuses to back out despite being told, promptly pees on the middle of the floor, and finally goes outside, leaving you with a stinky mess you don't know how to clean. Outrageous, right? Well, someone should tell this to the bison, because it did all that, and the homeowner still managed to keep a calm composure. You're probably wondering why this woman is so calm and collected. Well, she lives close to a herd of bison and even takes care of them, so she's pretty used to them. Bear in the city. Canada's not new to bears, but it's also not used to seeing them anywhere outside the mountains and forests. So when residents of downtown Vancouver found a giant brown bear casually perched on a garbage truck, they were concerned, to say the least. Obviously, the bear had wandered in search of food and climbed into the garbage truck, but it couldn't get out or was too scared to. So rescue services were called to lead the bear back home. But the story doesn't end yet, because a year later, another bear made its way to the public, this time in Burnaby. And this one was a fierce grizzly. The sight of the bear itself was terrifying, so residents kept a distance and let it go back to the forests. Cops confront deer intruder. In a Texas neighborhood, cops were called to investigate a suspected burglary after neighbors heard glass breaking. The homeowners were away on vacation, so the neighbors had no choice but to hope the cops would intercept the crime. So when the police burst into the Texas house, they were shocked to see the intruder had broken the window pane and wrecked the house. In an attempt to clear the house, the cop poked his head inside, only to back off. Turns out, it wasn't a thief who'd gotten into the house, but a deer.
That's a deer! It's a deer! It's a deer!
The cops finally lured the deer out, but it ran away. Well, I hope Bambi has a good lawyer, because this is a serious charge. Monkey takeover. It seems one troop of monkeys in India had enough, so it decided to take to the streets and raid buildings. Not just any buildings, government buildings. Here they are, staking out the presidential house, climbing on cars, and intimidating citizens. Although this looks funny, the situation got out of hand. Government officials complained about these intruders, but they couldn't do anything. Bear breaks into store. I guess bears are just really good at breaking into places they shouldn't be. This big bear broke into a store, and despite the owner trying her best to shoo it away, it kept poking its snout inside. But take a closer look here. The bear is tagged, so it means the bear is a regular, which explains why the woman is casually shouting at him to back off. The naughty bear, however, has other plans up its paws. It walks in, and you'd think it would grab a quick snack from the shelf, like most bears do. But nope, this bear uses the hand sanitizer and stands up, finally leaving in the end. Well, he's got better hygiene standards than most people. Mountain lion in property. Would anyone tell me the opposite of pss, 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 pss? Because as beautiful as this big kitty is, I don't want to cause any trouble. This mountain lion was captured prowling across a suburban neighborhood in Petaluma, and now look how it wanders into the enclosed space, as if it owns the place. The mountain lion made its way into the backyard after stalking the streets, and boy, is it a scary sight! Luckily, no one was outside at the time, so the cat wasn't as big of a danger. But things could have seriously gone sideways if the homeowner hadn't opened the door. Bear breaks into home. Check out this scary brown bear casually climbing onto a house's wall and prying open the window with its claws. The bear then pokes its head inside the window, which probably opens into the kitchen, because here it emerges moments later with a pork chop in its mouth. Now you probably think this is just a cute robber, but here's the scary part. These bears are extremely smart. They know where to find food, and they know how to get in. They also know who has enough food for them to steal, which means they probably observe a lot of people. So the next time you can't fall asleep, don't forget to think about the bear that might be lurking nearby, watching you closely. Wild elephant. In a silent southwest Chinese city, a lone elephant caused enough havoc for the authorities to be called. The elephant made its way from a nearby forested area to the suburban neighborhood after taking down fences and getting stuck in clotheslines. The Asian elephant reached downtown, where it was thankfully taken by rescue services, who later rehomed it to a sanctuary. But it looks like the region's share of elephant visits wasn't over, because a few years later, an entire herd of Asian elephants snuck into town and disrupted traffic. People ran away from the herd and called the police, but they could only watch until the elephants went away on their own. Ostrich escape. Imagine being late to work because there was an ostrich blocking the road. What sounds like an impossible scenario became a morning mayhem for citizens of Lahore, Pakistan. An ostrich escaped from a private reserve in Lahore and found its way on one of the busiest roads right by the canal. The ostrich was seen running alongside motorists and car drivers who were baffled about the scene. Most people steered away from the ostrich and then tried to catch it, but the big bird was too fast for them. Eventually, a few citizens were able to corner the ostrich, but it caused a huge road blockage. Raccoon breaks into a home. A man rushed to find his family screaming their heads off because of a scary intruder.
Where is it? Where is it? Where is it?
Fearing the worst, he asked them where it was and headed to the bathroom. And look at that! This raccoon has no plans to leave. The raccoon somehow broke into their house and found its way into the bathroom, but not before causing pandemonium. Even after it was cornered, literally, the raccoon remained upright on the light bulbs. The man tried to coax it out by whistling and giving it enough space, but the raccoon refused to budge. Although they stopped recording, the raccoon managed to eventually escape the household, much to the homeowner's relief. Gator in backyard. There's nothing unusual to see here. Just a gator battling a barbecue setup in someone's backyard. Wait a minute, that's not normal. Well, not unless you're in Florida, which, judging by the casual reaction, makes me want to believe this gator is Floridian too. But imagine a gigantic gator rolling across your lawn, displaying its aggression and even demonstrating its signature move. At first, the homeowners were quite amused, but when they realized the gator had no plans to move, they called in reinforcements. Rescue services let the gator play for a bit, before subduing it and taking it back to its swamp. Baboons invading house. Baboons are pretty ferocious. They're also a familiar sight in South Africa. For the most part, South Africans quickly dash inside whenever they come across a baboon. After all, most of us think our house is a safe place, but these baboons can easily break into apartments. They've been raiding apartments and stealing food from the kitchen, and terrified dwellers can't do anything because it's illegal to harm the animals, even if you're trying to save yourself. This has only made the baboons more persistent. The primates know they can't be stopped, so they don't. Sheep and streets. You know how we count sheep to sleep? Well, folks, it looks like the city's turned into the ultimate bedtime story, after it was taken over by flocks of hundreds of sheep, all walking the city at night. This happened in 2020, when hundreds of sheep invaded Samsun, a city in northern Turkey. The city was in lockdown, so the sheep were free to roam the streets as they pleased. Residents could only film the situation from their homes. Some found the sight amusing, while others felt jealous the sheep could visit the stores and all their favorite places while they were stuck inside. Jackals in the city. When we come across something that even remotely looks like a dog, we want to pet it, right? But I wouldn't recommend doing this to these animals because they're jackals, which can be very aggressive. This pack of jackals was seen staking out the Yarkon Park in Tel Aviv, Israel. And while you probably think this is something out of the ordinary, it isn't. These scavengers have made a habit of prowling in the park because they know passing joggers and walkers will go out of their way to give them a treat. Clever canines. However, officials have requested citizens to keep away, since you can never predict the animal's behavior. Crickets. Ugh, just thinking about driving through this horde of insects makes my skin crawl. Millions of Mormon crickets invaded parts of Nevada. And yes, that's too close to home for comfort. We don't know how exactly these insects got here. Many think they came out of their hiding holes due to the intense heat, but residents were not happy. The crickets were swarming roads, making it impossible for bikers or walkers to go outside. And to make matters worse, these little critters also invaded businesses and shops, running away customers and causing several shop owners heavy losses. Some even claimed it was a biblical nightmare. But you know what I'm thinking? Imagine going to sleep with these noisy folks right outside your window. Rhino on a stroll. Imagine going for a relaxing walk to clear your mind, only to come across one of the strongest predators to exist. Residents of a Nepal town experienced this situation firsthand when a rhino escaped from a wildlife reserve and made its way into the local market, which was bustling with people. Most onlookers decided to pull out their phones and record the appearance. Sadly, the residents of Chitwan didn't get the message. They followed the rhino, getting as close as they could, and even tried to coax it so it would follow them. After the rhino had garnered enough attention, rescue services stepped in and managed to return it to the reserve. Alligator on the road. Why did the chicken cross the road? I don't know. I'm too worried about a road-crossing gator. A giant alligator was seen crossing the road in Florida, and just look at how daunting it is. The gator was also seen sauntering through the neighborhood, spooking parents who were forced to keep their kids inside until it had passed. The 10-foot reptile was probably making its way back to the local swamp or pond. After all, this is Florida we're talking about. But even they were taken aback, and I don't blame them. If I saw this giant behemoth heading toward me while I was taking out the trash or commuting to work, I'd be freaked out too. Maned wolf. This long-legged creature looks like the animal version of the Slender Man, but as unusual as it looks, it's actually a maned wolf. This one made its way from the nearby forests to the Sanctuary do Caraca in Brazil, and while I would definitely be terrified if it happened to me, the residents of the region were quite chill. Apparently, maned wolves come out of their hiding spots to visit the sanctuary, where they feast on food left for them by tourists and natives. This happens almost every night, so the residents are pretty used to them now. But imagine coming across this creature in the middle of the night. Hogs in the city. A Siena neighborhood was left perplexed when the residents woke up one morning and saw that most of their front lawn had been wrecked. Flower pots were strewn everywhere, most of the grass had been trampled on, and there were even some fences that had taken a blow. Initially, people thought this was the work of mischievous teens, but when one resident decided to check his front door's Ring camera, to their surprise, the vandals were a bunch of wild hogs. The residents have no idea where the wild hogs came from, but they say the hogs were probably moving places. Elk invasion. We all want to channel our inner Disney princess and summon an army of helpful animals, right? But this is a dream for a reason, because as lovely and adorable as these elks look, things can get pretty spooky, especially when there are loads of them. A herd of elks was seen crossing the street to a golf course in Estes Park, Colorado. Although it seemed like a peaceful march, most stayed away from the elk's path because even the slightest disturbance can startle the animals. And let me tell you, they do not respond calmly. But most of the neighborhood let the elks pass through, calmly filming the sight from their windows. Thousands of blackbirds. Did an evil overlord just summon his army? Because why else would thousands of blackbirds circle the parking lot? We don't know why this happened, but thousands of grackles were seen circling a Kroger branch in Houston. Now, if you live anywhere close to the Texan city, you know grackles aren't a common sight. Even if you can't see them, you can always hear them. But such sightings are incredibly rare because such huge flocks usually move early in the morning. And did you know their flock is called a plague? I mean, just look. That's an accurate name. bees bombard hotel. If you're scared of bees, you might want to skip ahead. New York City is quite used to animals like rats, but hundreds and thousands of bees swarming the city with their stingers out? That's one heck of a tricky situation. At first, New Yorkers had no idea what was happening and from where the bees were coming. All they could do was run inside buildings and hope the bees wouldn't follow them. Then the swarm began to form a hive, a giant one. After panic runs, beekeepers were called to get the situation under control, which only increases my respect for them. Wild boar. When in Rome, do what the Romans do. Well, I don't think the Romans know what to do when a random group of wild boars decides to saunter across the street, thrashing bins, poking their snouts through fences, and even disrupting traffic. Most of the citizens decided to stay away because the boars were traveling with their young, and we all know how fierce a mama can be. But the boars' wild antics proved far too much for the politicians, who sued the region for their mismanagement of animals. Yup, these boars are so disruptive, they literally caused a political tussle. Zebra crossing. We think zebras are gentle creatures, but they're quite stubborn. So when they decide they don't like you, things can go in the wrong direction. A zebra escaped the zoo in Seoul, Korea, and to the zookeeper's dismay, managed to wander for a while before it was finally caught. The residents of the city were thankfully calm and composed as they refused to bother the animal and let it explore the city. Of course, they did call the zookeepers, who cautiously followed the animal and tranquilized it before taking it back. Seagulls invade AT&T Park. During a match between the San Francisco Giants and the Arizonian Diamondbacks, a massive flock of seagulls decided to sneak into the stadium and watch the play out. The seagulls came out of nowhere and perched on the ground, disrupting the game as players of both teams stood in confusion. They weren't sure how to chase the seagulls away. The second one flew out, another would take its spot. The sudden invasion halted the game between the Giants and Diamondbacks. Even the commentators found the sight perplexing.
The altitude and the flight paths get lower and lower here.
Eventually, the birds settled on the seats, and the game continued. Monkey breaks into house. Baboons aren't the only problem in South Africa. The native monkeys have a few tricks up their sleeves. An entire troop of cheeky monkeys routinely breaks into houses, so much that they even know how to crack open windows. They then make off with any food they can find, from fruits to home-cooked meals. While this may look like a funny situation to us, it's become a serious problem for the natives because most of the animals are protected under the law. So homeowners can't even defend their own place and are forced to watch the monkeys run off with their groceries. Deer breaks into school. A deer broke into a school, and to say the students were shocked is an understatement. The buck's sudden entrance spooked students, who took cover by barging into classrooms or simply running out. The deer had suddenly rushed inside the school, but as soon as its hooves shifted from grass to smooth marble, it realized its mistake because it couldn't balance itself and slid across the floor. But this isn't the first time a deer got into a school. A while ago, a buck infiltrated an elementary school. Students were evacuated and the deer rescued, so everything was okay. I guess deer just love going to school. Well, better them than me. Rat on the subway. We all know by now that New York City has an incredibly close relationship with rats, despite most people hating it. So it's not surprising to see rats aboard the subway. However, it's not a good thing because these rats can be a big pain to handle. So when this giant rat hopped aboard the subway, passengers were terrified, and the rat didn't make it any easier either. It kept jumping on passengers' legs, repeatedly bumped into their shoes, and was determined to make the short ride a living hell for some. Eventually, passengers got off the subway, but the rat stayed to terrorize new passengers. Locusts swarm. As a kid, Courage the Cowardly Dog was just the spookiest show, but nothing scared me more than the Return the Slab episode, especially when the Pharaoh unleashed his army of locusts. But the nightmarish situation became true for the residents of Mecca and Medina. The two cities were plagued by swarms of locusts, which made residents and tourists freak out. The swarm of thousands of locusts raided mosques, buildings, and even invaded houses. Environmentalists assume this is the effect of climate change. Locusts have always been living there, but due to rising temperatures, they're forced to fly out frequently. Ugh. Baboon raids bakery. In Pringle Bay, South Africa, residents have been dealing with a scary interloper who refuses to back away. A resident baboon sticks outside a local bakery where it knows sweet goods hide. The bakery workers have tried their best to get rid of the baboon. They've tried sealing the windows, hiring guard dogs, and trying to scare it away with brooms. But the baboon resists every attempt. After being locked out, the baboon has simply resorted to stealing bad goods from the hands of the local residents, who simply let it get away with it because they're too scared, and the law doesn't allow them to capture or harm the baboons in any way. Bear breaks into mall. It looks like this black bear needed a new hide because it wandered into a shopping mall. The bear cub broke into a shopping mall in the US and even managed to go into the first few shops before it was chased by the customers. But the bear was set on staying inside, so the mall was evacuated and rescue services were called. Children and adults who witnessed the spectacle claimed they were timely rushed out.
There's a bear, and we all look at each other, and we just run out.
So everyone remained safe, but the bear kept giving the law enforcement a tough time too, because it just refused to budge. After failed attempts at being lured out, the bear was tranquilized, tagged, and returned home. Monkey rides train. Just another day. Just another train ride. Wait, I didn't know monkeys could take the metro. As you might have already guessed, this happened in Delhi, India. And boy, do they have a monkey problem. This monkey wandered into the Delhi metro, and before it could escape, the train had begun to move. At first, the monkey didn't know what to do. It kept hopping around, hoping for a way out. Then it settled down, but not before giving some passengers a fright. In the end, everyone, including the monkey, realized this unusual visitor was here to stay. So they came up with a comfortable seating plan. India is no stranger to wild animals, but they can still be dangerous, so most citizens stay out of their way. In March 2019, a leopard escaped from the forests and wandered into the streets in northern India. The rogue leopard scared citizens and even chased them, hoping for a catch. Thankfully, no one was harmed, and they managed to seek shelter from the ravenous leopard. Authorities were called and tried chasing the leopard, but it took a total of 7 hours of anxiety and panic before the big cat was tranquilized and captured. Elephants invading pool. The next time you hold a pool party, you might want to invite the neighboring elephants, because if you don't, that's rude. Just look at them, casually playing in the water, quenching their thirst. It's obviously a daily routine for them. As for the people basking in the sunlight, I'm glad they're taking it well. I mean, there's not much they could do, but hey, at least they're letting the elephants do what they want without bothering or chasing them away like most people do. Kangaroo mob. This is why you shouldn't feed the animals that stop by your house. A homeowner captured this mob of kangaroos invading her front yard. The kangaroos had clearly made themselves at home, munching on the nuts and seeds the woman had laid out. It was as if they'd been visiting for a while and refused to budge, so she was left with no choice but to help them fend off their hunger. We don't even have to guess where this happens. Australia is known as the land of the kangaroos for a reason. But don't mistake this adorable sight with a kangaroo's personality. These little buggers may be adorable, but they can deliver a nasty kick when they feel unsafe. Man versus pack of deer. A man kept hearing sounds from his garage, so he went to investigate. To his surprise, a deer was staring back at him. The man grabbed a bag of seeds and tried to get the deer to exit the garage, but met his match when he realized the deer had brought a couple of friends. The herd of deer patiently waited outside the garage and began following the man as if to say, "Hey, you're not getting rid of us." Sure enough, as soon as the man had stopped, the horde of deer swarmed over him, each eager to take a bit of kernel. Goats take over. A sheep, a goat, and 3 lambs walk into a city council. Wait, I'm not telling a joke. This actually happened back in 2020 in Turkey, when the livestock, which had escaped from a farm, stumbled into the city, teasing citizens. They were later returned to the farm. However, this wasn't the first time livestock invaded the city. In 2020, in a town in northern Wales, an entire herd of goats strutted across the streets. If you're wondering why the town's so empty, that's because it was under a COVID lockdown. The goats had their fun roaming the streets, checking out stores, maintaining the hedges, and eventually returning on their own.